So this will be just a general overview of the elemental psychology that we've talked about in the first few videos. So people have all four elements within them, both physically and psychologically. Actually all five elements, but four elements of our gender karma. Yet in relationships, women will generally have an affinity with earth and water traits, feeling more comfortable when energy is stabilized and sensitized and nourishing, and when they can use their heart to feel into a situation. This means women will generally look for that type of connection. Men will generally have an affinity with fire and air traits, feeling more comfortable when acting, protecting, and using their mind or intellect to rationally understand the world. This dynamic is also relevant to same-sex couples where the more domestic partner embodies the female energy, the more career-oriented partner embodies the male energy. Now, what this means is that this is how we want to feel in a relationship. We're trying to bond through our gender identity. Women will generally have an affinity with those earth and water traits. This is what they're trying to awaken in the relationship. They'll wait to see what the man fills them with. And if it feels good, then they'll try to take on more of it. And then what doesn't feel good, they'll try to prevent. But women will generally try to be in the receptive role. The men will generally try to initiate and lead and give the woman what feels good and wait for that favorable response back. But of course, these roles get very mixed up. This is why we have relationship problems. Men can have an aversion toward leading, which means they're often even afraid to ask a woman out on a date. And a woman will have an aversion toward being receptive, which means sometimes men who are assertive and asking them out and being bold, if they have issues being in the receptive role, they'll shoot those men down and say, oh, he's cocky and arrogant anyway. And they'll wind up with the men who are afraid to ask them out because they're less threatening. And they'll help the man through the relationship process, but then the woman is not bonding to that positive gender experience, and neither is the man. This is a general overview of how masculine and feminine energy can get off. But this is a very important principle, and in astrology we look and see how that, or at least I look and see how that gender integrity is being expressed or not expressed in the partnership between two people. So, the powerful gender types come together in a relationship and either work for or against it as we explore. Even though we have evolved culturally with equality between the sexes, males and females still function according to a certain gender pattern, like we discussed. First, we need to be confident in that gender identity. Only then can we relax into the opposite and learn from our partners. So this is really important. Our gender identity is really kind of inseparable from our identity as a person. Every one of us, when we think of, quote, who we are, pretty much the first thing that comes to our mind is our gender. We might not look at it that way, but think of it. Think of if you're walking down the street and you see a dog, a cute dog walking up the sidewalk. You don't think to yourself, is that a boy or girl? Is that a male or female dog? You might think of it after a while, but at first you're just going to think, oh, it's cute, it's big, it's got, it's a boxer, it's a dachshund, whatever. But the person walking the dog, the first thing you're going to notice is if it's a man or a woman. With human beings, the first thing we identify is gender. It happens so quickly we don't even notice it. But the same thing is true with ourselves. As soon as I, as a man, see another woman, immediately I feel myself as a man. If I see another man, I'm in the masculine relative to his masculine. It's so deep. So our gender identity is almost inseparable from our self-identity. And the point is that in relationships, this gender identity is what's really being tested and what's really being activated and awakened. And this is why when we can really do the relationship right, we really feel powerful in ourselves, because it's within our gender that we really feel powerful. That gender becomes activated, and that level of self-awareness becomes clarified, and nothing feels better for a man than to be the man in the relationship, especially with a woman that he really loves, not just anyone who would go out with him. And oftentimes this is what happens. Men aren't with the women they really want because they might be too intimidated to talk to the woman they really want. They wind up being with anyone. because they're intimidated about asking a woman out. So the woman that helps them through it, and who's not bad looking or whatever, they wind up with that person. But that might not have even really been the one they wanted. Same true with a woman. Nothing feels better for a woman than to receive what she really wants to receive from a man that she really wants to receive it from. But that's not often what happens. It's often she's with the one who was not, threatening, or who wasn't intimidating, or who somehow fit into her plan. But that's not always the one that she really wants. So, we all must be happy with ourselves individually before we're able to have those positive experiences in relationships. And before that time, we project many negative traits of our gender. So as we talked earlier, women generally operate from a feeling perspective first. This is the powerful feminine energy. If they can't feel into and ground into a situation, they'll have a hard time acting consistently in it and trusting themselves and others. Men generally operate from an action-oriented and logical perspective. If they don't know what to do or are not able to think through a problem and solve it, frustrating emotions overwhelm them, causing a crisis of capability in them. So this is what happens if, when we first start the relationship, this is what people try to do. Even if the woman has helped the man through the courtship process, once it starts, she's going to wait for him to try to be in the initiating role. And he's going to try to do it. And this is when these gender roles start becoming noticeable. This is when the gender crisis starts. It's easy in the beginning. People always say, oh, it wasn't that way in the beginning. He pursued me. He might have pursued a little bit, but the woman was probably helping him if there's difficulty now in, with the gender roles. But men will generally operate from that action-oriented logical perspective. This is why there can be some difficulty when the woman starts expressing her feelings. So when we look at the elemental psychology here, women are generally going to be operating from that feeling perspective first because they're bonding more with the water and earth elements. And we're talking about in relationships because there are many women who have very dominant masculine natures in their life, and they're very oriented toward their career and things like that. But in the relationship, they're going to want to be on the receiving end in order to bond with that feminine nature. And so once they get in a relationship, especially if they are a very masculine type of woman who is sort of take charge, they might find that here they are with men who don't take charge themselves because they've done the work and helped the man through the courtship process. The reason they become frustrated in the relationship is because then the men are not active. And women, strong women, quote, will often say the men are either wimps or they can't handle their strength or they are not assertive and things like that. But oftentimes the woman with a lot of powerful masculine energy winds up in a competition with the men. And men who are empowered in their masculine nature will have a hard time wanting to deal with that. They're looking for a woman who is maybe more empowered in her feminine self. So strong women need to be relaxed and empowered through their feminine traits. Men also will often say, well, women, they're just ball busters and they don't need us and they don't, you go up to a woman and they shoot you down and all this stuff. Well, this is the way it is. It takes women a long time to open up, and you need to be persistent and tough, and those qualities of fire and air. Fire is clear and consistent. If you want to be with the girl, you got to make sure and go up there and be warm and pleasant, but authentic and sincere, courageous, flexible. Use your mind, use your discrimination. That's why humor is good. These are all fire and air traits if you want to be with the woman that you like. It's not that the women are all ball busters, but if you're afraid to be a man, then the women that you're going to be with are going to be the more aggressive women. So men get frustrated when their emotions overwhelm them at this point, and this is going to happen because they're going to be in the feminine role. If they haven't been in the initiating role and gone with the woman, gone up and asked for the date and went through the trials and tribulations of being with an empowered feminine woman, then the man's going to get frustrated and have that crisis of confidence, crisis of capability, once they have to start being that powerful man who knows where he's going in his life with the woman.